So let's see how this recording goes. So, Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. Welcome to this happiness class. This is a weekly Zoom meeting that you can join in. If you want to find out the details later on, you can go to bigquestionsanswered.com. I'd like to start by saying at the outset, because there's so much misunderstanding out there in the world. First of all, my understanding and the community that I belong to, which is an international Muslim community, believe in an idea that is love for all and hatred for none. That means it doesn't matter where you come from, if you're religious or not religious, we love you, and there is no sense of we're better than you or any sort of kind of negativity. The only point of these happiness classes is just to make the world better. And it also, as I'm trying to admit people as they come in, there should be a sense that we're not saying you must be a Muslim for the world to be necessarily a better place. We're just saying, how can we work together? How can we make your life better? We're here to be of service. And also, just maybe have a discussion. And I think one last thing I want to say before I kind of stop talking is I don't really know what I'm doing in terms of organizing this, or I don't know about streaming. We will try to improve things as we go along, and the best way to learn is by asking questions. So I've collected a couple of questions already from my teacher friends, some very interesting, but I'd say quite common questions actually. And there was part of a request from an earlier meeting we had a week or two ago, that was like a practice session, as it were, was, can you please give a question beforehand so that we can think about it? Because some people find it quite hard to think on the spot. So that question was, just to start things off, and then you can ask your questions afterwards, what makes you happy and why? Simple as that. So I really want participation. That's why we've got a Zoom meeting. Is there anybody who would like to ask a question? You can just put your hand up if you know how to. And the way to do that is there should be a button in the middle of your screen. Just look for it. There's a hands up button, or just make a comment. Whatever's easy for you. If you're not sure where the hands up button is, or if I can see your camera, you can put your hands up, or just make a comment, I have a question or something, or an answer. So if anybody's got an answer, that's great. The question again is, what makes you happy and why? This is a happiness class, so it will be interesting to hear what people have to say. I don't mind a little bit of a silence. People are thinking if they want to take part. Welcome, Mahmoud. I'm going to use your real name rather than the nickname I have, which is Zinedine Zidane. But that's not your real name, is it?
That makes me happy.
Makes you happy.
Use that name.
Okay.
But what makes me happy is, I would say, being with family and friends. That's something that makes me happy, or people that I care for, or people that I respect, being in their company.
Okay, cool. Nice, simple answer. Common. And why?
You feel uplifted when you're in the company of people who you respect, or you enjoy their company, or you love. Those are the types of people that you, that make you feel happy, because you're in their company, or you're somebody who, it makes you feel better that you're with somebody who is a good person, or you're morally or spiritually uplifted by somebody because you like them, or you like the way they behave, you like the type of person they are.
Okay.
That makes you feel good.
So what if a lot of people don't like their family for different reasons? That's a common thing, It's funny, but it's not funny as well, because it's really serious at the same time, and it's a common thing. So and I want to explore that before I try to give any of my answers. So what would you say if you don't like your family? Because it's quite common in our modern lives that people don't stay in touch with their parents because of some sort of argument or whatever, or just different family members. Um, do you have any solutions? So this is thinking even beyond your personal life. Do you notice anything out there that you think, oh, obviously that is the solution. This is something that people are missing. What do you think, Mahmoud?
I would say, I mean, within a family setting, or even any other type of relationship that you might have, where you maybe don't get on with someone. I think maybe the mediation of a third party can help, where somebody who both it could be you don't get on with your uncle, maybe another uncle or an aunt can help you, or to bridge that gap.
Okay, so if anybody wants to give another answer, that's great. Otherwise, I'm just going to dive in, and I'll just assume at the moment a lot of the meetings that I'm, been taking part of, they are often quite quiet, and hopefully over time, over the weeks, people will kind of feel more comfortable in taking part. In the meeting we had 2 weeks ago, there was a great question which I want to come back to, which is how do you even start these kind of deep conversations about life and Islam, maybe, or whatever, or happiness, because they're so important. And so I'm going to come back to that later. And I've been reminded of that because I can see a picture of our local kind of, how do you describe it in English, community organizer is called Nadeem Ahmed. So, or maybe I should just use his first name. So he asked that question. I'll come back to that later. But anyway, my short answer, and this is supposed to be an answer for anybody, not if their family is great or not, is this idea of love for all, hatred for none. I'll try to keep my ideas kind of repetitive, so you don't have to think of a million things or be super wise to solve your problems. So if you have this idea of, and I'm going to talk about how you can get that, but if you have love for everybody, then the problems start disappearing. So if you have a frustration with your husband or wife or your kids or whatever, but you come from a place of love, then you start thinking, I really care about this person, and I'm not going to try to continue our mini war. Because that's what things turns out. If you're angry with something, you hate somebody, you're not going to try to resolve that problem. You're not desperate to resolve that problem, and you're not open to yourself being wrong. You're not open to understanding that other person's problem. Why is that person behaving maybe in a way that seems like an aggressive way, but maybe they're just sad about something and you need to understand their point of view. So love solves all these problems. And I'm trying to keep my answers really short so that other people can jump in, and if nobody has any other answers, then I'll carry on. But one of the teachings of Islam, and this is all about how Islam can give you really simple solutions that can rapidly change your life. Islam teaches that if you want to have love for everybody, and I'll try to quote things so you can understand where they're coming from, or I'm not just making these things up. It says, Islam teaches that you should all just try to say, peace be upon you to everybody you meet, or at least, so there are different levels of doing that. So if you're in London and you're going past somebody who's not a Muslim, that might be a bit of a strange thing to say, peace be upon you. Be like, oh, okay, I don't even know who you are. But what you can do as a sort of a lesser level would be just to genuinely wish them well. Peace be upon you. The words of it, assalamu alaikum, actually means that I wish you no harm from my actions of all sorts, my hands or my words or any sort of behavior. And so if you practice that, or if you just think about like imagining doing that, this kind of well-wishing or this sort of positivity really changes the way you think inside. Remember, everything you say actually affects your mind. So if you say something negative, you will start thinking negative thoughts. Some of these things you might have to try to experience over a period of time to become more self-aware. And a lot of these question answer sessions will suggest ideas that you might have to think about afterwards and say, how comes, you know? So I did say I was going to quickly quote some sort of saying from Prophet Muhammad or a part of the Quran, so Prophet Muhammad is the let's say the founder of Islam, and the Quran, the Holy Quran, is according to Muslims the word of God, and it's a guide for life to make the world a better place. So that's my short way of saying that. Other people could explain it different ways. And so Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, if you want, he said, let me see if I can remember vaguely. I can Google it afterwards, but it goes something like, if you want to have paradise, and that means in the next life and in this life, which is an interesting idea by itself, then you need to believe. It's okay, fine. Why would why would you need to believe it? Part of belief means to understand wise ideas, and also part of it means to have hope. So that kind of makes sense. But how can you get that? How can you get to that stage? To do that, you need to have love. Now, why would you need love to be able to gain wisdom? Because love breaks down the barriers of prejudice. So when you have love, you actually become an open heart, let's say, gives you an open mind. So you become open to new ideas, and that's how you gain knowledge. And then finally, the thing I said, Prophet Muhammad said, was, he said, would you like, he asked his surrounding followers at the time, would you like to know how to love everybody? And then make it a practice. He said, the answer is, make it a practice to offer the salam, the message, the way Muslims say hello to each other, say peace to each other. And that's short. And I'd just like to quickly add very quickly to that this way of greeting people is very ancient. So the Jewish people would say, Jews would say, Assalamu alaikum, which basically is exactly the same greeting, which Jesus would have, Jesus, peace be upon him, would have also said, because he claimed to be a Jew. So therefore, Christians should say, and I've been to a church where the pastor or the priest would say, peace be upon you in this country. So it's not unheard of. So that's my quick answer. If anybody wants to be involved or give their answer, it's not just my answer. I'm not some sort of high priest or something. Just would you like to also give your answer? So if you want to, you can, I'm not really controlling the mute thing, so you can unmute yourself if you like, or you can put your hands up, you can make a comment if you're not feeling confident about saying things yourself. It doesn't matter. Maybe next week or the week after you're more confident, but if you are confident now, take part. And I don't mind awkward silences. I love that. Okay. So Mahmoud, go for it again.
Yeah, so I'd say, I mean, it's not always the case that, you go straight from, hate to love or the other way around. I think sometimes what happens is, you can have two people who might not agree with each other, or even two, families, or even two communities, or a number of communities that don't agree with each other. But I think there's a place where there's a place for agreeing to disagree, but doing so in a way that is peaceful. So we may be different faiths, but different communities, different backgrounds, different ethnicities. We might not share the same views on things politically as well. People, are politically, they have diverse views. Especially in America nowadays, you can see that. But I think the key thing there is that despite our differing views on whatever it might be, the fact is we should still be able to coexist and, as you said, love each other, see beyond the person's opinions and whatever else, and see him as a human being, and realize that everybody's got their own story. And I think is it in the Holy Quran, it says there's a verse that says la ikraha fid din. There's no compulsion in matters of faith or of belief. And I think that I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe you can answer whether that's something that can be applied more widely, not to belief, and then beyond that to sort of people's political affiliations, their sort of community affiliations. I don't know, but what I would say is that I think as far as the Islam that I know, preaches tolerance, or even more than tolerance. It's a case of embracing people, even if they have different views and beliefs. Maybe you can.
Yeah. So there was a lot of really good points that I liked from there, and you've reminded me. So one of the great things about people asking questions or saying things is like, oh, I missed out like 10 different points that would be useful. So this mention that Mahmoud mentioned about there's no compulsion in matters of religion, that would surprise a lot of people. What does that even mean? It means like, you can have your faith, I'll have my faith, but we're still friends. That's another way of saying that. And that's the spirit of Islam. In fact, as Mahmoud also said, the spirit of Islam is more than that. It's about protecting other people's faiths. Like, you are considered a martyr if you save a church. That's in the Quran. We can, and by the way, because it's going to be on YouTube, you can say, oh, can you give me the reference to that? And I will, in the comments, reply to that if people want references to particular points. So I can always do that. So that's very much the spirit of Islam. That's a really important point. And the second thing you said, you mentioned the Black Lives Matters thing, and also sort of issues around the world with basically resolving up about conflict between different groups. And of course, love can solve that kind of problem largely and slowly, not suddenly. It's not like you might start feeling love for other people, but they might not reciprocate. They might not feel love for you back. It's a slow and gradual process, and it's all about making the world a tiny bit better in the way you can. So that's one thing. And the other thing you reminded me of, Mahmoud, by saying what you said, was that this show is not just about personal happiness and a sort of selfish sort of thing where you just want to make yourself happy. It's about the wider happiness. It even includes helping solving the environmental issues, solving relationship issues, of course, solving economic issues. These are all things that Islam has really simple solutions to. Of course, simple doesn't mean that it will suddenly be taken up, but maybe piece by piece, those things can be taken up. So that there's always going to be an ongoing introduction to what these shows are about. Also, that reminds me of one more small thing before I start with a question from one of my teacher friends. Is, please go to bigquestionsanswered.com if you want to know when the next session is, Q&A session. All right, so would anybody like to add something to that before I start with the next question? No, that's cool. I'd assume no. So one of my friends at school said, "What's the point of it all?" So, and I like to. So when he says that, and I said I'd answer it on this show, and maybe you'll watch it later on. What he meant by that is kind of like, what's the meaning of life, sort of, and why are we alive? It's kind of all of that kind of general, what's going on, what's the point of it all, sort of question. And also, it's very important that when you answer a question, it's good to know something about that person, because then this is like, we're trying to make the world a better place. So you're kind of being like a doctor. And if you don't know the person you're trying to kind of like help, let's say, hopefully it doesn't sound like, what's the word? I don't know what the word is. But yeah, it's good to know who you're answering and where they're coming from. Let's just put it that way. And so this is a really nice guy who really he also already knows about our kind of Muslim, called the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. He's fairly open-minded, I would say, but just I would say he calls himself somewhere between atheist and agnostic. Started from being a Christian, but he felt it was kind of forced down his throat, and he sees so much conflict, and he doesn't see a religion being particularly useful, or either the opposite. So he's like slowly moved away from it. So that's where he's coming from. And the question, just to repeat, is I'm going to make the light on in a second, which is slowly it's becoming nighttime here. He said, what's the point of it all? Which is a really good question. So if anybody would like to take part, they can. You can comment. You can unmute yourself if you like. There's only a couple of people here, which is great. I like starting off small. Yeah. Okay. So okay, I'll start and then carry on. So there's different levels of answering this question. And I did give him an answer on the spot, sort of thing, because I don't always like to give an answer on the spot. I like to be just to let people give their point of view uninterrupted. But generally, the purpose of life is, there's so many different ways of answering, but Islam gives one very specific answer, but it's not always well understood. And that is to go from a lower level of life to a higher form of life. And that is a continuous process. So the Quran specifically gives a very simple answer for people who don't read into the meaning of specific words, which is, I have not created you, whoever you are, big, great person or average Joe, as it were, except to worship me. So what does that even mean? So, and that can easily be really badly misunderstood, okay, because a lot of people say, why does God want to be worshipped? That's like, it's a bit weird. Why would God want to be worshipped? But that word, worshipped, is a really poor translation of this word called ibadat, which basically means to continuously develop yourself into a higher and higher form. One of the meanings that's been explained to me is really, really cool, I think, is to take on the colors of God. That's a way of explaining it. The strange thing about Arabic, it's got a lot of root words, and from those root words you can understand deeper and deeper meanings. So the way it was explained to me was, it's like putting yourself in a hot rod into a flame so hot that it takes on the color of the flame. That's to give you an idea that you basically submit your will by destroying your personal passions so that you eventually take on the beautiful colors of God. So who is God? You need to know for that transformation. And God always starts off by explaining in the Quran that he is the person who takes care of you. He's been described as some Rahman, the root word, which comes from Rahm, which means the womb. So basically, you're like a baby inside the womb, and he's taking care of you, and taking care of your development. And then the Quran explains, after saying he's Rahman, who's just taking care of your needs, he wants you to grow as well. So he calls himself Rahim, which means God, that is, who encourages you to develop and rewards you to develop. So the whole idea is to just make you a more and more beautiful person, to become at one with God, or at one with the Force, as I like to say sometimes. Basically, or find peace is another way. So that's one of the many explanations you can give as to what's the point of it all. If anybody likes to add to that, I can just keep talking. But we've got another, say, 11 minutes. So I'll give it, that's my short answer for now. I sometimes feel like afterwards I could give a more inspiring answer or something, but that's just the basic answer. Mahmood, go for it. Please add to that answer
I was
or
just
whatever you
asking,
want to say.
I mean, obviously you've mentioned the relationship between man and God, and sort of the journey towards becoming a better and better person. Um, uh, and what are the results of that with regards to the people around you? How does that affect your relationship with the people around you?
That's an interesting idea. So the first thing, I'm not sure if I'm going to go in the wrong direction with this, so you can just interrupt me. So the first thing that comes to my mind is another saying from a Khalifa, which is a spiritual teacher. Um, uh, he's the fourth Khalifa. There's currently the fifth Khalifa, which means the spiritual teacher of what kind of Muslim I am, which is Ahmadi Muslim, which is an international community, and we can talk about that more later on. He said that you should be like a candle in the dark, and so you should give your light, you pass on your light to another candle, as it were, and then they should pass it on and on until the whole world is illumined with beauty and wisdom, and becomes a better place. Is that roughly the direction you're talking about, like making the world a better place?
Yeah, no, absolutely that. And also, I'm thinking in terms of, you know, I mean, the way I've been taught, in terms of the way, our relationship with God, and becoming as I think, as you mentioned, becoming a better and better person, or rising up in terms of your spiritual condition. I mean, that should also reflect in the way you are with people around you. So you have your relationship with God, and you have your relationship with your fellow man, right? So
Yeah.
maybe you can.
Okay. I think maybe, yeah. So I think it's like you have an answer in your head and you want me to say it, kind of. That's what I feel like. Maybe I'm not sure. But yes. So definitely, as you become a more godly person, that doesn't mean you become more arrogant. In fact, you become more kind to humanity. And that was and this is probably something I might have failed to express. So the whole idea is to take on the colors of God. That means if God says he is kind and he helps people become better people, God wants you to be that. So that's what it means to be taking on the colors of God. That means not to be like, I am powerful. That's not the kind of qualities you take on. It's kind of, how can I serve? How can I make how can I make your life a better place? I'm mixing up also all my sentences right now. How can I help the world become a better place? How can I make your life a little bit better? Is the kind of mentality. Yeah, and another teaching of Islam, by the way, that is that God says that the rights of man, or that means humanity, are greater than the rights of God, meaning that you should go and serve humanity before you even worship me. That's part of who you are. You should, if you think you're a godly person, your job is to serve humanity even more than just prostrate to me. That's a secondary to actually serving humanity. So does that in any way explain what you were asking?
Yeah, that's right. That's very helpful. Thanks.
Cool. Okay. Now, I wanted to get back to a question that Nadeem asked last time. I think I gave some sort of answer, but I like people to realize I do think over the answers, and I do value the questions anytime people do ask questions. And his question was like, how do you even start these kind of conversations? Because nowadays, a typical conversation is either about the weather or about somebody else and making fun of them, or that's your typical sort of about politics. It's kind of, that's what office conversations tend to be about, but not really deeply questioning yourself. Because it's easy, let's say, to deflect and think about other people and talk about other people. So he said, how do you even start that conversation? So I was thinking, somebody said, it's easy. Somebody in our last meeting said, it's really easy. You just have to just think of something, start a conversation, start a mini conversation. And that's true to some extent. Just be friendly and start a conversation and then work on that. That's one answer. But I was thinking, if you're really not sure, how can you start some sort of conversation? Like, you don't want to think for yourself. And then I thought, what about a little survey? Okay, and even if the conversation doesn't continue, and that survey is a one sentence survey, which is, have you ever heard of the motto, love for all, hatred for none? And surprisingly, I'm getting a lot of yeses. So somebody knocked to sell me electricity or something, door-to-door salesman the other day, and I've got love for all, hatred for none on my front door, and I said, have you ever, I don't want your electricity, but have you ever heard this phrase? And he said, like, I think I have. And then this teacher friend, he actually said yes, because he's in my local area where there's a lot of Ahmadi Muslims, so somebody's obviously mentioned it to him as well. So, but the reason why I pick on that phrase, love for all, hatred for none, is that, remember, our aim as Muslims or Ahmadi Muslims is just to make the world a better place. So if you just say, have you heard of love for all, hatred for none, there's two things that are going to happen, even if the conversation doesn't go any further. And that is, first of all, I kind of think the most important, is that people might think, oh, that's an interesting idea. Love for all, hatred for none. Like, how can you have love for hatred for none? Why would you have love for all, hatred for none? And maybe with all the conflict around the world, you might think, that kind of sounds like a good idea. And a lot of people do say that, but it may be a difficult idea. At least they've thought about it. And let's say making the world a better place is not a one big sudden step. It's like bit by bit. So if you've made the world a tiny bit, 1 millimeter kind of better, just by putting that idea out there and giving that idea, as it were, to somebody, and maybe they'll do something with it, maybe not. You've done something positive, and for me, that's fantastic. Okay, that's the starting point. But also, it leads on to lots of other conversations, and even if it doesn't lead on to another conversation, if they think about it in the future and they just search love for all, hatred for none, they're going to find out about other really positive teachings from the Ahmadi Muslim community, because that's an international motto that is actually really well known. Because I've asked a lot of people on the streets about this, and they are aware of this motto, love for all, hatred for none. Not everybody, but a lot of people are aware of it, especially people who live in London, for example. And secondly, it's a great platform to start a conversation. Like, the next question would be, if people take any interest at all, which is, you could say, what do you think about it? What do you think about it? And should we have love for all? That's a really important question. And even if they don't agree, if they make one tiny step towards it, you've made in my opinion, you've made the world a slightly better place. So we got 2 minutes left. I was just thinking, there are a couple of other questions. Has anybody got any other questions? No? Yeah. Okay, fine. So I'm trying to spread the questions out, because there was more than one teacher with more than sort of one point of view. So there was another teacher friend who's Christian, and she said, and this is like a fun little thing on the side. She said, so she's Christian, says everything about Christianity makes sense to me. And I said, even the Trinity is the 3-in-1 thing. And she said, yeah, of course, because it's just different sides of the personality of God. So I did give an answer, and she did consider it a valid answer. But would anybody like to have fun trying to give a response to that? So is, can 3 in 1 be logical, given that all you're saying is that there are 3 sides to one God personality? Anybody? You got 10 seconds. Okay, so I said, like, when Jesus was praying to God in the garden of Gethsemane or something like that, I can't even pronounce it properly. He was like, please, I don't want to do this thing, but if you want, I don't want to be put on the cross, but God, if you want it, I'll do it. That does not sound like 3 sides of one personality. And she said, yeah, you're right, doesn't make sense. So she thought about it a bit more. So anyway, that's pretty much done. Thank you very much for listening in. Hope you enjoyed it a little bit. We're going to do this every week. If you thought this whole thing was a bit rubbish, I'm sure it was rubbish in many ways. Please just tell me how, and it'll probably cut off any second. So, assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. That's it.